Ankh and Ma'at. Welcome to Kemetic Ascension, brought to you by the Shrine of Ma'at. My name is Heru Jedid Ma'at Aten Ra, also known as Jabari Osaze. I am so pleased that you're here with us on what is clearly a cold Sunday in New York City. You know, if you are a regular participant, a regular attendee, an important part of Kemetic Ascension, that I am going to begin by asking you where in the world you are and how long you have been part of Kemetic Ascension. Where in the world are you and how long have you been part of Kemetic Ascension? We're so pleased that you've come back here with us. I know so many of you regularly partake in Kemetic Ascension, this gathering of individuals who are focused on hearing the call of our ancient African ancestors, this gathering of individuals who are practitioners in ancient African spirituality. I'm so pleased once again that you are here. Today is November 20th, 2022 in the secular year. And I know that you, like me, are getting ready for the winter and are getting ready for the new year. So I'd love to hear if we have any shout outs. Where are we, Anika? Has anyone responded?
They're coming in slowly.
They're coming in. I'm moving a little quickly maybe today. I want to say to you that today I am thinking about so many things. I've been thinking about some of the difficult situations that some of our members are in. I've been thinking about the passing of some of our elders. One of the elders that was important to me that made his transition is a brother that was simply known as Brother Sekou, a book vendor on 125th Street who was more than a book vendor. The kind of individual who would sell books and DVDs and had read all the books and had watched all the DVDs. He was an active part of the intellectual fiber of this community. And so he made his transition this week. I'm also thinking about the fact that we're going into the Western holiday season. This week is actually that day that most of us know as Thanksgiving. We're going to talk more about that today. And hopefully we'll have a better assessment on how we should behave as well. Okay. Do we have folks that are responding?
Yes, we do. We have Maati Aset, who is currently between Los Angeles, Atlanta, and Baltimore.
So it's the West, the South, and the East. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot. Ankh and Ma'at to you.
Question Me from Hoover, Alabama.
Yes, Question Me is on everything we do. Ankh and Ma'at, how are you?
Sinette Cochier, who is here from Detroit via Sedona, and she's currently running a retreat.
Oh, wonderful. Wow. Are you running the retreat in Sedona? Because Sedona is really one of those places where there are many sort of metaphysical, transcendental retreats. Are you in Sedona right now?
There's Sen Rich, who is here with us, Rich Devlin.
Yes, out of Queens, New York. Ankh and Ma'at to you, dear brother, one of our full members. Ankh and Ma'at to you.
Also Cochier.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Cochier.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you said Cochier.
Cochier.
See how quick she put that together? Yes, Sinette Cochier, how are you? We know you out in Motor City. That's where I last saw you. And I know you also run retreats. Are you in Sedona running the retreat right now? Is that what you're saying? That'd be very interesting to hear. Ankh and Ma'at to you.
Ma'aten Walker from Las Vegas.
Ankh and Ma'at, Ankh and Ma'at. Ma'aten Walker? Ankh and Ma'at, Ankh and Ma'at. I don't think I've heard that name before. Ankh and Ma'at, and welcome.
There's Sen Derek Grant. Good to see you again.
Ankh and Ma'at, welcome back, welcome back.
There's Shane the Watcher, 616.
Yes.
Sacramento, California.
A comic book nerd like me.
Watching us since Kemetic Legacy today.
Yes, Ankh and Ma'at to you. And let me just say, I'd love to know what you think about Black Panther, the sequel. Number 2, Wakanda Forever. Ankh and Ma'at to you.
We have Abut Aamut Nebu Nefra Amenti, also known as Dior Nelson.
Yes, Ankh and Ma'at to you. Ankh and Ma'at to you. And I have to get used to your Kemetic name because to me, you're priestess Dior. And I need to get your Kemetic name straight. Can you say it to me one more time? If I mess it up.
Abut Aamut, Nebu Nefer Amenti.
She is priestess Abut Amut. That's really the way to remember. And I'll get the rest of it straight soon as well. Ankin Ma'at to you, Ankin Ma'at.
So Derek Grant says he's repping Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio.
We have Sen Jason Holmes out in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Ankin Ma'at to you, one of our full members. Sen Jason, how are you, dear brother?
Coach Ye has been a member since June and watching since 2002.
Ankin Ma'at to you.
2020, yes.
So that Coach Ye, Ankin Ma'at.
So that Adamike is here. Blessings from Gambia.
The Gambia, Ankin Ma'at to you. I hope you are doing well out there. The Gambia is on our bucket list.
And so that Coach Ye says, yes, she is in Savannah.
Ankin Ma'at. That must mean it's pretty early there too. Ankin Ma'at to you.
We have Ida Ref Black Riders out in Oakland, California.
Ida Ref Black Riders. Ankin Ma'at. Interesting name. Ankin Ma'at to you.
We have Ron Green out in Alton, Illinois.
Ankin Ma'at. Welcome back. Ankin Ma'at.
We have St. Jehuti Mess, OG the fourth in the house.
Ankin Ma'at, St. Jehuti Mess. Hope all is well. Not far from here. Hope all is well.
And Heru Asad Ankh Amun-Ra out in Dallas, Texas, with us for 3.5 years.
Wonderful. Ankin Ma'at. Folks that have been here for a long time. Ankin Ma'at to you.
Sinette Lisa Attaway out in Philly.
Ankin Ma'at, Sinette. Ankin Ma'at, one of our full members. Ankin Ma'at to you.
We have Kyle Byrne Reed from Montego Bay, Jamaica. Good to see you again.
Are you in Montego Bay, Jamaica, or are you from Montego Bay, Jamaica? You know, whenever I ask that specifically, one of the reasons why I ask that is because it is cold in New York City. And I would love to be right now in Montego Bay, Jamaica. It's cold. This is the first day of the winter that New York City had its freeze. So it dropped below 32 degrees. So trust me, I would rather be elsewhere. Ankin Ma'at to you.
Brother Ron Green says that he's been with us for 3 years.
Ankin Ma'at.
We have Sinette Sakina Ra. Yeshua Sakina Ra.
Wonderful. Ankin Ma'at to you.
I hope your arm is still healing well.
Yes. Yeah, I heard you had a tumble, right? Ankin Ma'at. You've seen Anika more recently than me. By the way, you have your exam. I have to return it. She submitted an exam and I haven't returned it yet. Got caught with everything else. You'll get it this week. Ankin Ma'at to you.
And then we have our Jati in the house.
The Jati who just texted me as well, so I know he's there. Ankin Ma'at to you. The Jati of Bennu of Phoenix, also known as William Humphrey, or Ascend Tehuti Forever. Ankin Ma'at to you.
Okay. We have Shahid Douglas, one of my students in my Cometic language class.
Ankin Ma'at.
St. Louis.
Wonderful.
Yes, and OG the fourth is one of our full members and a Hemson New.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Shrine.
One of the folks that I've known longest of all the folks that are part of the shrine. Known him over 20 years. He was a little kid when I met him. Now he's, twice my size. So Ankin Ma'at to you. One of my favorite people in the world outside of the Kemetic tradition too. Hopefully we'll see you soon. This blasted pandemic means that we haven't had people in here. I think that we're going to announce when we're going to welcome people back. It probably will be sometime in late December, early January, not exactly right now, because Jabari will be traveling a bit in December. So hopefully we'll see you all back in here soon. Or some of you back in here soon.
We have Taki Grant.
Taki Grant is on. Ankin Ma'at, brother, how are you? It is wonderful to hear you that you're there. Ankin Ma'at, doing great work with the Hopi movement and the documentary Hopi, the role in economics and civilization, and a good, solid brother, someone I am pleased to call a friend. So Ankan Ma'at to you. I'm glad you're here.
Yes, and that's Seshmeet, Ubuntu, and Ma'at.
Ankan Ma'at, one of our full members. Out of New Jersey, I believe. How are things going in New Jersey? We need to figure out how we're going to get some Shrine members together. And perhaps the folks that are in the area, like Sanet Seshmi, will assist us, because just seeing folks during the pandemic, during the Heb Kepru is painful. So hopefully we'll gather and do some stuff in the next few weeks.
We have Jason Edwards. Good to see you.
Ankan Ma'at to you.
Christian Ellis. Good to see you.
Ankan Ma'at to you. I got your text. I've not had a chance to respond. Ankan Ma'at.
Cherise Clement out in Cleveland, Ohio.
Ankan Ma'at, another name that we've heard before.
And Coburn says from Montego Bay, Jamaica.
Okay, but not in Montego Bay. Probably in someplace cold like we are, saying, "Why am I here?" It's days like this that Anika and I would love to, leave our coats at home, jump in a cab, and be in Ghana, West Africa. Really, I mean, Ghana is at this time of the year. It is like 80 degrees. Look at Anika's face. She looks sad all of a sudden. Look at her face. If you can only see her face. She said, she was thinking, why did he mention Ghana? I don't want to be here right now. I mean, it's like 80 something degrees in Ghana right now. The last time we went, I had long sleeves and stuff. And I was like, why do I have these? So definitely, we're sun people, right? And this is the period where the sun disappears in the west. So that's rough.
We have, Shana Watcher says Wakanda Forever was super powerful. They take a couple of watching, but the absence of Chadwick was felt throughout the film. Didn't understand the black versus brown plot at first.
Yeah, Shana Watcher is an intellect and also a comic book fan like me. So all the stuff he said is the stuff I said. All the stuff he said was the stuff I said, because in many ways, it really was a battle between people of color in a lot of that movie, right? And so that part was rough. It's like, man, you got Latinos and Black people fighting to the death here. What is going on? Fascinating film. I mean, I think that you can analyze this from different angles. You saying it's snowing? Is that what you're saying? Why are you whispering that so that I can be distracted while I'm talking on camera? I didn't see snow. No, there's no snow. She just listen. If I dislike the cold, Anika really dislikes the cold. I said, Anika, we need to do some cold weather things so that we're not just hoping for it to get warm again. We have several weeks, months of cold. She said, but it's cold. Like all the stuff I said, she just said. I said, yeah, I know, I understand it's cold, but we have to do some things in the cold so that you don't feel like you've been deprived of something. You still get some sun. She said, it's cold. I was like, yes, no, I'm saying cold weather activities. She was not hearing none of it. She is really, really, when it gets to be 62 degrees, she says it's cold. I go, Anika, it is not cold. It's maybe a little chilly. She goes, how you gonna tell me? So she is, as much as I'm miserable, and I'm miserable, I really don't like the cold. She is extremely miserable. So I get it. And for those of you like Sanet Adenike and all the folks in Benue, like Sentehudi Forever, who are still enjoying the sun, I mean, it's just New York City. And it gets colder than this. I'm on a cold rant right now. It gets colder than this. But when the cold first starts to set in, that is when you are like, why? And the other day I put on some shea butter, went outside, and I was like, what happened to my head? Skin is like, you're not supposed to be here. Anyway, just ash, folks. Send us some sun. Please put some sun in a box and send it to New York City, please, because this is going to be a hard time, I'm telling you. We are the followers of Ra. And anyway, is there anyone else?
Yes. Yes, Demetra Bryant. Good to see you.
Ankin Ma'at to you, one of our full members. How are you?
And Sen Cleo Ford.
Another full member, Ankin Ma'at.
Another member, Anjana Khan.
He's another one in Florida who's probably enjoying. Well, I'm not sure if you had tornado issues. I don't think the part of Florida you were in had major stuff going on to it, but he's also enjoying the sun. You know what I mean?
We have Big Payback Porter out in Hobart, Indiana.
Ankin Ma'at, that name is always memorable. Welcome back. He's always with us. Ankin Ma'at.
We have Marjorie Janavia.
Ankin Ma'at, that's Sen Tehuti Forever's mom. Ankin Ma'at. Ankin Ma'at. I didn't get to see you when I was last there. Hopefully next time when I return, we'll get a chance to spend some time together.
We have Heruja Huti Pata Umika Temra.
Yes, who is a full member. Changed his name and I did not recognize it. Ankin Ma'at to you. Full member, full member. Yes.
We have Yvonne Heron out in Florida. Nice, warm and sunny.
Have I? I don't know if I've heard that name before. Name. Yeah, Ankin Ma'at to you and welcome. Welcome, welcome. What part of Florida are you in?
And we have the so wonderful Abutsa Shot in the house.
Abutsa Shot, one of our favorite people. I'm glad that she's in. I wasn't sure she was going to be on today. It's always good that you are there. One of the folks that's holding down the legacy more than virtually anyone else. You know, she's one of those people that are ride or die Kemet. You know what I mean? There are a bunch of people on that you have called out that are folks that are really bringing this legacy back into its fullest form. So it's good to hear that you're with us. Ankin Ma'at to you, Abut.
We have Marie-Céline Ngo Baleng Duport from France.
Now, I think I would remember that name. Ankin Ma'at to you. Are you from France or are you in France? Because right now, Sanet Adenike is the person that is furthest away. I still think that the Gambia is further away than France. So even if you are in France, I think that you're going to be still further away. But Ankin Ma'at to you. Wonderful. And welcome, because I don't think I've heard that name before.
We have that wonderful couple out in Ghana, well, currently in Kemet, the Schaefers.
Are you still in Kemet, Schaefer family? I'm wondering if you're still there or they are still in there? Anika's whispering it to me. You could just say they're still there. They weren't supposed to be there forever. Ankin Ma'at to you. We're glad that you are doing well in Kemet. And hopefully we'll get some, Anika's probably gotten some videos and didn't share with me. Some videos of some of your performances. That this wonderful couple who lives in Ghana are in Kemet for an extended period performing. That is wonderful. What a blessing. What a blessing. So I'm hoping that everything's going well over there.
Yeah. Kemsa Ra Nefer Atum out in Baltimore, also known as Kwame.
I think I've heard that name once before, right? Brother Sen Kemsa, have you been on regularly? That name is maybe vaguely familiar. Ankin Ma'at to you, nonetheless.
Yvonne Heron is asking how we can get this message out to our kids.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more we have to do to ensure that the tradition is really palatable to a younger audience, right? So much of what we do is kind of cerebral because most of the folks who are in the Kemetic tradition were raised in other traditions are now adults, right? So we have to do a lot more to make sure that what we do is accessible to children. The Shrine has been thinking about that quite a bit, and I think that we are on the cusp of doing some other things. I think the pandemic really prevented us from, for example, having some activities for kids. One of our priestesses is really into the art end of the Cometic tradition, and we had really planned to do some wonderful projects with young people. So it's coming. It's coming. While the pandemic has not ended, it's kind of like, how do I even describe it? Let's see how the winter treats us. But definitely, it seems like it is waning. It's waning. The number is certainly still there, and people are still getting very sick, and some people are actually passing. But at the very least, it looks like the numbers are waning, and so we hope that will mean that we'll be able to have many more physical gatherings really soon.
We have Christian Ellis.
Yes, you said Christian Ellis. Anka Ma'at to you.
You mentioned that you had a conversation with his wife.
Yeah, we got to schedule some time to really do some more stuff. Yes, Anka Ma'at to you.
Deborah Kennedy, good to see you.
Anka Ma'at, full member of the shrine. Anka Ma'at Sanet.
Black Ace from Buffalo. Oh my goodness, the temperatures and the weather up there, the storm, so we can't even complain.
Black Ace, I'm sorry that I was on a rant. I am sorry. I have no right to be on a rant.
And Yonk is also out there.
How Yonk is in Buffalo too?
Yeah.
How much? And they're both regular attendees, regular participants of Kemetic Ascension. I last heard that it was at 4 feet and and still snowing. So how much did you get? I hope it's not still snowing. How many feet did you get? They are snowed in. It is really serious. And folks in Buffalo, which is, for some of you who don't know the area, Buffalo is in upstate New York. I mean, they're close to Canada, right? Buffalo is one of those places where folks that live there, they know snow, right? They are to some degree used to snow. But when you get 4+ feet, it don't matter how comfortable you are with snow. That means that you have to go get emergency provisions. You got to tie things down. You got to think about what school is going to look like, what work is going to look like. It really is challenging. So how many feet did you actually end up getting? And are you and your family still in good stead?
We have Sen Lee McCoy.
Sen Lee, Ankan Ma'at, who is working with us on a name. So it may be soon that we won't necessarily be announcing Sen Lee McCoy, right? There's those conversations. Ankan Ma'at to you, Ankan Ma'at.
T. Coben out in Flint, Michigan, also part of the Lighthouse.
Ankan Ma'at, T. Coben, one of our regular folks. Ankan Ma'at to you.
Minnie Williams, hey Sinette, how are you out in Hattiesburg, Mississippi?
Ankan Ma'at, Ankan Ma'at.
Sinette Tatia out in Atlanta.
Do I know that name? Ankan Ma'at. It sounds familiar. Maybe it sounds different in my head than how Anika is pronouncing it. Isn't that a full member? No? That name is, I think you're saying it differently than it sounds in my head.
There's 4 T's and an IA.
Yeah, I think that, okay. Please let us know how you're doing. And if you're not a member, we know we see you a lot. You should be one, right? Right? We're going to be talking to you really soon. December is a little bit more than a week away. The application for membership of the shrine will be live. And our initiation for full members for full membership will go live. We'll start in late February, early March. So know that we are really looking forward to many of you who are part of the Shrine of Ma'at family to join the Shrine of Ma'at family in a more fulsome way. So hopefully many of you who are always here, will be members as well.
And it's done virtually.
Right. Now, for the next initiation, I may try to have a session or 2 in person. It's not going to be the whole initiation, but we may try to have a session or 2 in person. And that doesn't mean that if you're not here that you still can't partake. It is primarily online. That's because the shrine has so many members who are outside of the New York City area. But you'll also know that many people from this particular group that will be completing and all the other groups, the full family of the Shrine of Ma'at tries to come together in June for the Hebkep Ruwer. That's the celebration, and it really is we call it our OPET Festival weekend. So it's more than just their graduation. We do a lot of fun stuff together. So we're looking forward to you all being here. We'll announce all of that really soon.
We have Boss Trucker, tell us where you're from.
That name is familiar.
I think you can recommend beginner's reading material.
Kind of depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking to understand history, it's one thing. If you're looking to understand practice, it's a little more difficult because there aren't that many beginners reading books. I know that when I first started into the tradition. I read things like Tony Browder's contribution to Nile Valley Civilization. I also read Medu Neter 1 by Rao Nefer Amen. There are other books that you can read, but none of them really say this is how you should begin the tradition. That's something that we're working on as well. And of course, there's also, and this is not necessarily a beginner's book either, but there's also The Art of Prayer by the head of our sister shrine, the Temple of Anu, Rasan Kepper. That's another book that you can definitely get your hands on. But there are probably a number of texts that I would suggest you would read. Hopefully when my book comes out, because it is meant to be, this is how you can enter the Kemetic tradition. That'll be the one that we'll be mentioning.
And yes, Senetia is Cortia.
See?
I don't know people's Facebook names.
See? And of course, Cortia is one of our full members out in the ATL or near the ATL. You know, almost no one that I know that says they live in Atlanta really lives in Atlanta. It's one of those interesting things about how Atlanta works. But definitely we know her well. She's one of our active and full members. And I've seen her use that name before. That's why it seemed familiar to me. And that's why I knew. I was like, that sounds like someone that I should be making a comment over.
She says Conley, Georgia.
Conley, Georgia. How far is Conley, Georgia from Atlanta proper? Because I saw that wasn't the last time I saw you, but I saw you when I was there for, I did a tour of the museum there, and I want to go back and do that again. So hopefully I'll be announcing, there's so many things up in flux with my schedule, but I'm hopefully I'll be announcing a whole set of museum tours, including, you should know, it has now been set, I'm going to be doing tours of the King Tut exhibit in Las Vegas. So those dates, if you're unaware, those dates are December 16th and 17th. So Friday and Saturday, 16th and 17th. And if you want to know more about that, whenever I go to Las Vegas, I'm working with a wonderful group and a powerful couple. Definitely go to the Mastering Mindsets Las Vegas website and they'll be announcing it. We should probably put some links to their stuff on ours as well so that you can get access to it. We do hear that some of you are in Las Vegas. So definitely that's a good time for us to meet.
Let's see. I feel like some things came in. Yes, Jason Edwards is asking about the application process and if he can contact us about it. They will be available on the website. We're going to send out information and announce it exactly when it's going to be available on our next Cometic Ascension. And then once you fill out the application, you'll be called in for interviews. So that's pretty much what the process.
Once you put in an application, that will start a more formal conversation with you. Mm-hmm. You should know. If you have questions, you can always reach out to us. But definitely, I think that when you submit an application, you're going to have a lot of communication with the Shrine of Ma'at, because we interview everyone because we want to make sure that we're the right spiritual home for you and that you're the right member for us. So we don't just accept an application and then have someone join initiation. We take the application process very seriously and the interview process very seriously as well. So that should all start, let's say late December, maybe early January, we'll start having interviews. And for those of you who are full members of the Shrine of Ma'at, you should also know that you can also be part of that process. It's primarily run by the priest, but definitely you should know that if you'd like to get a sense of what's going on behind the scenes and how folks are part of the shrine, you can be part of that as well.
And we have Ran Raina from New Jersey. So big bro, I just want to thank you for helping save my life. Live always.
Wow, Anken Ma'at, that's serious. Anken Ma'at. Wonderful. Thank you for being here. And dua, dua, dua. Thank you.
And we have one question from Christian Ellis. What type of relationship did Kemet have with West Africa in those times, if there was one?
I'm going to say to you that it's clear that Kemet had relationships with folks to their south, right? They sent expeditions to Punt. They had all sorts of times that they were in communication with Africans from further down, but I don't know of anything written that describes having relationships with folks all the way to the West. And so that's the kind of question I don't have a clear answer to be very honest with you. So I'm sure that there should be more work done. There's so many things that we don't know that we still need to know. And I would say that that's one of them, clearly. Clearly.
Okay, that's everyone.
Ankin Ma'at to you. You should know that when this broadcast is over, people are still putting in how long and where they are. And we do read those. So Ankin Ma'at to you all. It is wonderful that you are here with us, that you've chosen to spend some of the time that many of you could be spending with your families with us, particularly because we are part of your family as well. And so let me say Ankin Ma'at to you. Welcome to you. We are so pleased that you're here for Kemetic Ascension, brought to you by the Shrine of Ma'at. So many of you have been part of Kemetic Ascension for some time. So you know that at this point, what we do is we start with the ritual ceremony that was put into its current form by our elder, Baba Heru Ankh Ra Samad Sepata. And so I am asking that you stand for what we call the opening of the way. This is a ceremony, a ritual, some ceremonial movements that remind us of just how powerful we are, remind us of our connection to the entire universe and to those divine entities that created. So please stand. Now, you're not just watching us, please stand and put your left foot a bit further forward, like you've taken a small step. And then you're going to expose your palms in front of you. As you expose your palms in front of you, you might even note that this is how you can actually perceive of energy. From here, what you're going to do is you're going to make the left hand a bit further forward than the right hand, and the right hand can be a bit lower than the left hand as well. In some ways, the hands and the feet are mirroring each other. Keep in mind that we don't want you to break your wrist hard. Sometimes I see people like this. That's not how we see it on walls on Empapri. If you're going to break your wrist, do it ever so slightly, okay? From here, what we're going to do is we're going to take a deep breath, breathe into your abdomen, not from here, and then you're going to let it out while chanting the word for everlasting life, Ankh. As you do that, you're also chanting not from here, like Ankh, but from here, Om. You want it to vibrate at the top of your crown. Does that make sense? Let's begin. Take your breath. Om.
Anetrak in Bedhet.
Anetrak in Bedhet.
Nuke in Bedhet.
Nuke in Bedhet. Anetrak Hapi.
Anetrak Hapi.
Nuke Hapi.
Nuke Hapi.
Twal Winter.
Twal Winter.
Turn to the right.
Anetrak Serket.
Anetrak Serket.
Nuke Serket.
Nuke Serket. Anetrak Keb Senu.
Anetrak Keb Senu.
Nuke Keb Senu.
Nuke Keb Senu.
Twal Winter.
Twal Winter. Anetrak As.
Anetrak As.
Nuke As.
Nuke As.
Anetrak Amset.
Anetrak Amset.
Nuke Amset.
Nuke Amset.
Twal Winter.
Twal Winter.
Anetrak Neat.
Anetrak Neat.
Nuke Neat.
Nuke Neat. Anetrak Dwamutef.
Anetrak Dwamutef.
Nuke Dwamutef.
Nuke Dwamutef.
Twal Winter.
Twal Winter. Anetrak Newt.
Anetrak Newt.
Nuke Newt.
Nuke Newt. Anetrak Geb.
Anetrak Geb.
Nuke Geb.
Nuke Geb.
Twal Winter.
Twal Winter.
Anetrak Shoe.
Anetrak Shoe.
Shoe. Shoe. Shoe. Shoe. Nuke Shoe.
Anetrak Tefnut.
Anetrak Tefnut. 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 Nuke Tefnut. Twal Winter. Anetrak Paut in Titeru. Nuke Paut in Titeru. Anetrak and Boo in Titeru. Nuke and Boo in Titeru. Twal Winter. Take your breath. Om.
Winter.
Twa Winter, and dwa to you for doing the opening of the way with us. Remember, the opening of the way is the ceremony that has us remember just what we are made of, just how powerful we are. It is of critical importance for us to remember that we are the stuff of the universe, that we have all the powers of the universe. In fact, we are the divine force in microcosmic form. That means you have all of the powers and the rights and responsibilities of the universe, of the divine force. It is of critical importance for us to remember that our task is to cultivate this divine energy so that we can live into who we actually are. This is of critical importance. And so I'm truly hoping that you are doing the opening of the way. This ain't theater. You ain't at Magic Johnson's. You're not watching BET. You're supposed to be doing it with us, because this ceremony will help you understand that as you are doing anything important, you should start with the opening of the way. And when you start with the opening of the way, you will recognize that all of those things that seem so larger than us, those challenges that continue to beset us, are actually beneath us, that you are a divine entity with all of the power that you can muster. And so we are hoping that you continue to do the opening of the way with us so that you can truly remember just who you actually are. Yes. Question.
Shane the Watcher wants to know what the reason for the change in direction from east to north was.
That's a really good question. I'm going to say to you, we're still not doing it in the fullest way, right? The reason why we face north is because the first entities that we call, who are the first entities that we call? Let's see if we can have someone answer that question in our room. And I'd like to see who's going to say it first. There are two names that we call, both the divine feminine protectress and the divine masculine protector of our organ, our cells, our physical body. What are the first two names that we call? As you call those, you should recognize that they are the deities of the north. They are pointed north. And when we hear, even in the Rayupert and Ruangare, where they are, we know that they are pointed north. Do we have some answers? Enbedhet and Hapi. They are the deities of the north. And so that is why we do it north. Now, let me say to you that the way that our elder does it, is still the way that we do it. We call that the way of the elder. So we do it that way, particularly when we are working with him. But when the Shrine of Ma'at does it, we usually face north. We should still, and I haven't talked about this much publicly yet, instead of going right, we should go left. Why? Because we're following the names of the deities that we're calling. So when we call them in that sense, we can start with Enbedhet and Hafi, but once we get over here to Serket and Keb Sanuf, now we have some challenges, because they, if this is north, what direction is this? East, right? They are not the deities of the east, they're the deities of the west. So we should do it this way: bam, 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 and then back to north. That's the reason why we're making some alterations. And so we have said that members of the shrine should actually know how to do it both ways. There's the new revised manner, and there's also the way of the elder. And so you should be prepared to do it in both of those ways. That's a really good question that we haven't been asked in Kemetic Ascension yet, right? Does that answer make sense? I hope it does, Shane. I hope it does, then, Shane. Okay. Other questions? No? Well, you should know that at this point, what we do is we go into what we call Hessi. What is Hessi? Hessi is the way that your ancient African ancestors engaged in galvanizing divine energy through harmony, through song, through affirmation. When you read the Kemetic text, clearly, let's say you're reading the Rayupert and Ruangare. Sometimes you're going to read it and you're going to see it says, we say this 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you go, why is it written that way? And you say something 4 times, and then you say something else, and then you say something else 4 times. It's because what you're hearing is usually what we call the refrain. So many of these ceremonies that are described in these funerary texts were supposed to be sung. And there's a long history of those temple chantresses, particularly women, but there were also temple chanters that were male, who were known to sing the divine words. This was gospel before gospel. Before anyone ever said the name Jesus, Yeshua, they were chanting according to the Kemetic tradition. They were singing according to the Kemetic tradition. And we have the names of some of the ones who were very prominent. So what am I saying? Hessi is how the Kemetic people sang those most important descriptions of their divine sacred journey. And so I'm hoping that you will engage in Hessi with us as well. Today, I believe we have a Hessi that is produced by that couple, the Schaefers, right, Anika? That's what we're doing? Yeah. What are we doing today? Canoe? Yeah? Yeah. It's not canoe. Kumra, right? Yeah. The Kumra Hessi, right. Mm-hmm. So we're about to hear the Kumra Hessi. You should know that this is an oldie but goodie, right? This is one of those that Baba Heru would sing in the early days of the Shrine of Ptah, our shrine of origin. So, Anika, please, can we do their version of the Kumra Hessi, brought to us by the Shrine of Ptah? So, family, you've heard the Qumran chant. It's a little Baba Heru's was a little different, but I'm going to say to you that when Baba Heru hears this, the Schaefer's do something very interesting with it that he did not do, that I'm sure he loves, right? And so there's nothing wrong with making them live in your own mouth, in your own understanding at all. This is the Qumran chant. That is one of the old ones. I know that when we were young Kamites in the Shrine of Ptah, occasionally Baba would sing this chant, and everyone would be like, is that written somewhere? How do we learn? How do we learn how to do it? And then later Baba would say, you know this chant. Be like, no, we don't. You have to teach it to us. And so it took a really long time. Baba, I was lucky enough to be one of the tech savvy people around Baba Heru. And Baba had actually a recording of it that he wanted me to digitize. And that's how I got to know it. And that's really how it goes. So it's Qumran, Qumran, Qum Heru, Qum Heru, Heru, Ra, Ra. Qumran, Qumran, Qum Heru, Qum Heru, Heru, Ra, Ra. Qum Ra, 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 Qum Heru, Ra, Qum Heru, Heru, Ra, Ra. Qum Ra, 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 Qum. I think I'm messing it up. How's it? How do you do it? Qumran, Qumran, Qum Heru, Ra, Qum Heru, Heru, Ra, Ra. Qum Ra, 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 Qum Heru, Ra, Qum Heru, Heru, Ra, Ra. Qumran, Qumran, Qum Heru, Ra, Qum Heru, Heru, Ra, Ra. Qum Ra, 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 Qum Heru, Ra, Qum Heru, Heru, Ra, Ra. Qumran, and then you can go lower, you can go higher. Of course, when you have people together doing it, sometimes there would be some of the men would do one part, the ladies would do another part. You could it's one of those chants that you can go on with forever. And then all of a sudden, someone grabs a hand drum and they're dancing, and you know what I mean? It's just, it was amazing when we would do it regularly in the shrine. And I'm really hoping that kind of fellowship returns when this blasted pandemic finally ends.
So there are questions about how to get access to that one. This one is not on our Shrine CD.
Right.
Because this is actually Baba Heru's music. So
right.
We did not put it on the CD.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're interested in other songs on the CD, it's available on all of the different digital platforms. If you are Pandora, Deezer, iTunes, all of those.
And you should understand that I am quite sure that we're going to have, this is probably going to be for full members. I don't know if it was a full member that asked that question, but we're probably going to have a workshop on Hessi, right? Because we have found that obviously when we were all in the shrine together, we would do Hessi and you would kind of learn it that way, right? But being that everything is digital right now, that doesn't happen as easy. So certainly some of the Hessi that we use are on that CD, on that streaming source that you should get access to. Kemetic Meditations, Temple Music Volume 1. You should definitely look for it. It's on virtually every streaming source you can think of, it's there. And you can also purchase copies and you'll get those too on CD. So those are some of the different ways that you can get to know that one. But as we do a workshop on Hessi, you're going to know more about that as well. We'll have a Hessi Fest. Is that a cheesy name, or did I just come up with something that we should use? Anika's not sure yet. She's laughing at me. She's not sure. If it was cheesy, she would have said so. But she's not saying it's great. But we should have Hessi Fest. And Hessi Fest should really allow us to just learn new Hessi that we can use. Hessi is powerful because, it's one of the ways that people think about the tradition that they're in, find themselves in the tradition when they're not doing much. If you're just walking somewhere, you can find yourself ensconced in Hessi, right? You can find yourself just chanting something that helps you remember who you are, that helps you get through your day. And so we're really hoping that when we actually introduce Hessi to you, that that's what you're doing as well. Keep in mind that you can create your own Hessi. There's nothing that says that you can only do the ones that we're sharing with you. There's a long history of Hessi. There's a long history of Hessi. Some of the Hessi that you'll hear on that CD are things that come directly from ancient Hessi. Directly. And when I think of that process, I always think that when we are singing Hessi, it's almost like the ancestors turn around and say, who is singing that song? Because they don't hear them very often, right? Anymore. And so that is really, really important for folks to be able to sing and worship and galvanize divine energy in the manner that our ancestors did thousands of years ago. I have been told that Baba Heru Ankh Ra Samad Se Pata is in the house. Let me say Ankh and Ma'at to him. Give him some. He's doing his chant. Is he doing it?
Yeah. Yes, it's Kum Ra, Kum Ra.
Kum Heru Ra, Kum Heru Heru Ra Ra. Yes, that's the chant that comes from our shrine of origin, the shrine that Anika and I grew up in, the Shrine of Ptah, which was founded many decades ago. He's gonna say, you made me sound very old. Many decades, I'm gonna say it anyway, he's gonna beat me up later. Many decades ago by our shrine elder. He is the holder of the Shrine of Ptah, the oldest shrine in the West. And it's really important that we recognize that the Shrine of Ma'at is really a fruit on the tree, and that tree's root is the Shrine of Ptah. So when we say, sing Hessi like that, it reminds us that people have been doing this for a long time. This ain't new. This ain't new. And so we're so pleased that he shared that with us many years ago. And as I said, it was one of those Hessi that I didn't know the words to, right? Baba would just break into it. But it's a little complex, right? Right? So I remember hearing another elder priestess, I think I'm glad she's not on here because I'd be beat up. I remember hearing an elder priestess sing it once, and I was like, I never learned that Hessi. She said, I'll teach it to you. And then she never did. So the Kumbra Hessi was really elusive. And Baba has translated to something to the effect of the hidden sun is revealed to my face. And in many ways, we're talking about the power of the divine entity that exists beneath, inside, around all things, us becoming aware of it. Because the reality is, when you embrace the call to higher consciousness, what you are recognizing is the fact that divinity is all around us, that in fact, divinity is us. And that if you are an infant, you don't recognize the divine around you. Everything just seems like a cacophony of existence, when in actuality, you are a divine entity that is part of an ancient, in fact, universal, immortal, divine drama. That is what you recognize. And you must recognize your role in that drama, what kind of player you are in that drama, what your responsibilities are in that drama, what you have done and what you must do in that drama. And so that is in many ways the way that I interpret this beautiful, beautiful Hessi. Okay, so Ankan Ma'at Baba Heru, please give him some love and some myrrh. You should know that our elder is still out there working. He's still making beautiful Sa protective amulets, and you should actually both send him some energy, send him some moolah. Can we say that? Some moolah, and also purchase things. You don't have to just purchase things, right? You can send him a donation, right? You know that, right? Supporting his business is wonderful, but you can also simply send him a donation so that he can get the proceeds for all the work he's done and not have to always do work every single time he receives a penny, a dollar, a dime. Does that make sense? So please make sure that you're doing that, because our elder should be strong in order for the tradition to be strong. His walk is our walk. If he didn't do the things that he did in the late 60s, early 70s, I would not be here right now. Either I would have joined some other tradition and been miserable, or maybe I would be one of those people in church like this, You know, if you look closely, you'll see those people in church, right? They're there because that's where the community is. They're not there because they're adherents to the entire Christian mythos or that they quote unquote believe those things. They're there because that's where the community is. And they're just like this. I remember speaking to a brother who I'm very close to. I'm not going to say her name. Maybe that might be unfair. But one of the elder sisters who actually wrote prolifically about the African tradition. And he said that she went to his church. I was like, she's in church? And I was surprised to hear that. But then later he told me she'd be sitting there just rolling her eyes the whole service. Rolling her eyes the whole, like, oh my goodness, these people still believe this? That's where the community is. That's why she's there. So the reality is the Shrine of Ma'at and other Kemetic shrines are endeavoring in this period to create community. So you can really recognize, really celebrate who you really are and still have the community. You're not just on your own, because that's what happened for many practitioners for a very long time, right? Just on your own. You're the person sitting there with the, with the ankh on in your white and no one understands you. In your family, you're that one, right? When something happens in race or something happens in Africa, they talk to you about it. But other than that, you're on your own. I know that you know what I'm talking about, because that's me and that's probably you. That's probably you. They tiptoe around you on certain days. My family has dinner for Thanksgiving every year. And they invite me, but they know that they're like, we want to invite you to dinner. Well, you don't really celebrate it, but we want you to invite you because we're gathering. We know that that's not important to you, but we're getting together because they know they'd have to tiptoe around me. There was a point where I was a young revolutionary where I wasn't having it. I was not having it. I remember my family had Thanksgiving dinner at our house. All of my cousins and aunts and uncles came. And I had planned something because I had said to my parents, we should do something different and stop celebrating white supremacy, the annihilation of the Native American, and what would end up being the enslavement of the African. They were like, boy, just have some turkey. So I made a gigantic, it must have been at least 2.5 feet, a diorama. I made a model of an enslaved ship complete with the little enslavement bodies in it. Complete with it. And as soon as my family came in the door and the turkey was coming onto the table, I went upstairs. I painted my face red for the blood of the Native Americans. And as soon as my father put the turkey on the table, I came in the room and bow, put the diorama next to the turkey. I said, this is what you're celebrating. You're celebrating the annihilation of Native American men, women, and children. You're celebrating the rape and the torture of the African. And that's why my face is red, and that's why you're going to eat your turkey right next to this. And my father, knowing that, giving me a platform would mean that this would go on and I wasn't going to stop. He just said, go upstairs, go upstairs, go upstairs. We'll bring you food, go upstairs, go upstairs. Because he knew that if he engaged in a discussion, it would be worse. Go upstairs, we'll bring you food. You're upsetting your aunt, go upstairs. So you are probably like me. You're one of those folks that's always telling people that we are Africans and we should be celebrating African tradition. It can be lonely. Why should it be lonely? You're not the only one. I'm not the only one. She's not the only one. These traditions, these shrines are here to create community. So with that, we're talking somewhat. Are you laughing at me? Yes, she is. She's like, he's on a rant. That's what you look at her face. Anika has heard this story many times. She's probably heard it from my family's perspective. Right? Like, listen, our son was losing his mind. So they were worried about me. They were worried about me. They were really worried about me. Around that time, I started saying, this is when I was in high school. I started saying that I was leaving the Christian church. I didn't know to go where. I had heard about some other folks doing something different. I kind of was interested in Nation of Islam, but I really wasn't feeling Islam either, right? I was aware of the Nuwapian tradition at that time. So I was thinking, maybe I'm going to be part of the Nuwapian tradition, right? And I remember I came in from hanging out with my friends one day, and my parents said, "Oh, someone's here to see you." I was like, "Who's here to see me?" And there was an older Black man sitting at the kitchen table. He was actually a radical Christian Roman Catholic priest. And so they thought that if I got a chance to talk to him, maybe I would recognize I could still be radical, still be African in the Roman Catholic Church. They were trying to keep me there. And he's still around. I respect him greatly. That wasn't where my calling was. In fact, years later, when I spoke to him about who I was, and he didn't recognize me, I was an adult after that. He said, "You've done good for yourself." So, anyway, as we talk about these challenges, yes.
So Jason said, my mom would say, "Boy, don't come in here with that Black stuff."
That's right.
But we use more colorful words.
Yes. My parents would use colorful words too, by the way. My mother's from Guyana, so she would use some words. I'd have to ask someone what they meant later. It's like we don't use those words in the United States. But it was equivalent to the same thing. And my parents acted like that. I remember when I told my father that I wasn't eating pork anymore. He was like, "Oh, stop it. Come over here and get these ribs." It took him a good 20 minutes to realize I was serious. I wasn't going to eat his ribs. He was like, "You're not going to eat the ribs? Why? I don't understand. What did the pig do to you?" So, this is one of those challenges that we're trying to find ourselves in an environment, in a society that seeks to continue to steal who you are, that seeks to render your existence in the world as beginning with enslavement. And then they don't even want to tell you the story about your enslavement. So I want you to know that this week, perhaps the reason why I'm on a rant, Anika, is because this is the week that begins some of that stuff, right? This is the week. My family will gather for Thanksgiving, and I will definitely be there. You might say, "Well, why do you go?" Because there was a point where I thought at that time, you know what? When I get older, I'm just not going to come. But the reality is, if you don't go, that's when your relationships with your other family members go fallow. I'm there for the celebration of family. And they know that. I'm going to tell you that it's still difficult, even for me, someone who has been in the African traditions for over 30 years. It's still hard for me. Because I go there and they pray, and I'm like, "Oh, goodness." And I go there and they, say, "Oh, what are we thankful for?" And I want to say, really? This is when you're going to think about what you're thankful for? A day that celebrates the annihilation of people? Really? It's hard. It's really, really hard. And then the other thing is, sometimes when I go to a sort of a distant not a distant relative, an extended family member's house. I remember a few Thanksgivings ago, by the way, I always call it Misgiving Day. A few Thanksgivings ago, we were all there and hungry. We were at my aunt's house. We were like, "Why are we not eating?" And she said, "Oh, we're waiting for the minister to come from down the street because she's going to bless the food for us." And I remember standing there and looking at Anika, and Anika looking at me and being incensed. I'm like, "You waiting for someone to come when you have two chief priests in your midst? That's what you're waiting for." But you try your best not to beat up the people that love you, right? Because where do you get when you're beating up the people that love you? How does that advance you? So I stayed quiet. Ironically, when that minister came, she said, "Jabari, we had performed a funeral together." And she says to my aunt, "Do you know he's a chief priest?" My aunt says, "Oh, yeah." So I just want you to know that this is a challenging period, especially for me, and it may also be for you, right? I mean, it's hard to just celebrate football in Turkey when you know that the reason why you're celebrating football in Turkey is because of a celebration that occurred many years ago. In fact, last year was the 400th year. Did you know that? Did you know that? Isn't it interesting? In 2019, people of African descent all throughout the diaspora made their journey to West Africa, many to Ghana, to celebrate what many call the year of the return. And that just 2 years later, there'd be an acknowledgement of what occurred for the native people 400 years later as well. Isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting that these things are connected? At the very least, we should be able to now say, well, if everything that we're talking about occurred 400 years ago, what was happening 400 years ago that is so relevant to where we are today that we should think about it today? And if it is relevant, why are we not having a conversation about it? You know, one of the things that I wanted to include, and I forgot, in this celebration, in this conversation was, and if Anika, if you can add this, I forgot to add it. I don't know how. I want you to get a sense of some of the challenge of what we're talking about here. Because really what you should recognize is that we are at a point where so much of this story is amongst us, and people would like for you to celebrate give me 1 second. So much of what is happening, they would like you to celebrate, right? You're supposed to celebrate this. And in many ways, I just sent it to your Shrine email. And in many ways, what we have to recognize is these celebrations occur without any critical historical context. And they would like for you not to have critical historical context. Just celebrate. Just go to the store and buy things. Just watch television. Just eat all these foods, by the way, which are some of the least healthy foods, get fat and tired. Don't use your mind. Don't use your divine intuition. That's really what this is about. And you know, here's the deal. I think that we should recognize this day. I think we should recognize it so we have an opportunity, so we have a moment to think about what happened. Because what happened impacts where we are today. And if we better understood what happened 401 years ago, we would better be situated to actually do the things we need to do right now. That's what we should be doing, rather than being a glutton, falling asleep on the couch, and then rushing at midnight that night or the day after to really involve ourselves in crude commercialism. We should be talking about what happened. It's a difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing. Did you get it, Anika? Mm-hmm. So I want us to think about this a little bit. Today, I'd like to talk about Kemetic wisdom of thankfulness and the history of Thanksgiving. The Kemetic wisdom of thankfulness and the history of Thanksgiving. Look at this image here of this family, this beautiful little Black family. I'm assuming this is supposed to be mom and dad and grandparents and their 3 children. Can I say this? Is there anything wrong with a Black family gathering with all of the hell that we catch in every day of the week, every minute of every hour we exist in this world, we catch in hell? Is there anything wrong with Black families getting together to share a meal and to celebrate their togetherness? Is there anything wrong with that? Of course the answer must be no. Of course the answer must be no. We should gather with our families and show them love and care and concern and spend time talking, because part of what these celebrations are is they're intergenerational, right? That's the reason why I end up at these celebrations. It's a time for me after I eat. I get a chance to just sit and talk with my nieces and nephews. If it wasn't for these celebrations, my life is very busy. Their lives are very busy. When would I just have downtime to talk with them, to hear about their lives, to see them grow? When would they get to really know me? I don't live that close to them. But on the same token, we need to do this with a critical eye for analyzing how we got to where we are. We should be saying we are able to celebrate this day as a family because we persevered what those people attempted to do to us. We should be celebrating these days in a very different manner than everyone else, almost everyone else. Anika, are you able to put the picture up? It's there. Look at this picture. In my ignorance, I don't have children. In my ignorance, I didn't realize that they were still doing this. This is at a school in Long Island. In fact, one of my, the sister is kind of an old mentee. She always has to remind me she's an adult now. She's not a child anymore. She has her own kids. And you can see that little boy with his big glasses in the front row. That's her son. And can you see that some of those kids, even Anika, do you notice that there are more Black kids as the Pilgrims than there are as the Native Americans? Did you notice that? Look at this picture. Do you see the ones on the left are supposed to be Pilgrims? Do you see our construction paper? By the way, that didn't take a short period of time. They are mirroring what they think their dress would have looked like. And on the other side, we have the Native Americans. By the way, the Native Americans' outfits are really pitiful compared to the Pilgrims' outfits. And they're there celebrating the time that they came together. And in coming together, they were thankful for what they received. This is propaganda. This is painfully racist propaganda. That's what this is. And they're feeding it to our children. Now, some of you are saying you're not surprised because this is the way that I celebrated it. This is the way that I learned it. I just was naive to think that in 2022, they're still doing it the same way. After we know as much as we do. When I was this age doing this, there was no internet. Jabari's old. There was no cell phone. The best I had was the encyclopedia that my mother went to go when she bought groceries. Some of y'all old enough to remember this. Don't hide. You know that you did this. Your mom did this too. She would go to the grocery store and she'd get a letter or two if you had a little bit more cash. She'd come back and say, here's E. And you'd be like, oh, all of the words that are in E. And I would read the encyclopedia because I was a nerd. I know that's a surprise to you. I know it's a surprise to you that I was a nerd in those days. Okay, some of you are saying the only thing that surprises me is that you're describing this in the past tense. But I'm saying to you, I would get that letter and read it. It was my door on the world. That was how I got information. No access to the internet and to the, I'm sure it's more than terabits of more than petabits of information that you can have access to. I had no access to that. When I was that age, I had no access to revolutionary thought. How would I? My parents were hardworking people. They weren't part of revolutionary movements. They hadn't gone to school and gotten a corrective understanding of history. That was the challenge that I had. In 2022, we're still indoctrinating our children and saying that the reason why they should have a chance to be thankful for the things that they receive is because these Europeans came and they had so little and the Native Americans were so nice to them. That's the way that we're told the story. And so they shared a meal. Anika, question, comment.
Baba Heru says, should we not include African nations on the list of those who required to pay reparations?
Reparations to the Native American is what you're saying, really, right? Because we're here. Is that what you mean, Baba Heru? Or you're saying reparations for our enslavement? I think that when you are trying to repair something, you should look to the person who has gotten the most benefit first. That's what you should do. Because obviously, when you go to those African nations, you're going to primarily see people who are impoverished. You're going to be primarily see people who were also the scourge of the system that forced us here. That would almost be like being in a fight and getting to the emergency room, and the two people, you guys were in a fight, and in the emergency room, both of you are bruised and tattered, and you're asking for something from someone who is about to go into surgery. Honestly, what you should be doing is looking first to the people who receive the most benefit. By the way, you should also know that those people who are part of, and this is, by the way, these are their ancestors that did it, right? Right? They're not getting benefit from what their ancestors did, other than what the Europeans have done. They are still today bearing incredible benefit from the stealing of land, the stealing of people, and the continued theft of natural and human resources. They're still benefiting from it today, right? Can you find Africans that are benefiting from you being torn from the continent? I think you would struggle to find that. But in that instance, recognize that those African nations are the ones who apologize. Those African nations are saying, we need to allow these families that have been taken from here to return. That's what they've done. That's what they've done. You'd be hard pressed to hear the new king of England make an apology that's backed with anything. You'd be hard pressed. One of our really good friends, a chief for the last 25 years in Ghana, West Africa, now has it's been 3 weeks now. He just received dual citizenship in Ghana. Not because he has a family member of someone in his lineage that's from the continent that he can draw himself back to, but because he's a diasporan African. They said, you are now a citizen of Ghana. So he's a citizen of Ghana and a citizen of the United States. He's from Ohio. It is those nations that are attempting to reconcile this history, this destruction of diasporan Africans. What have the Europeans given us? There were some people who erroneously and ridiculously said, well, affirmative action is the attempt for these Western societies to contend to deal with some of this painful history that has left us out of the mainstream of American society and the benefits that American society is supposed to bequeath. And now affirmative action, folks, will probably be gone in June. It had been tattered and undermined and weakened for decades. It'll probably entirely gone in June. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look very carefully at what the Supreme Court is doing with their new conservative supermajority. So I think that we should be looking at those people who are the most powerful people in the world. And they became the most powerful people in the world because they went into people's lands. They destroyed them. They stole and still own the rights to those natural resources. They took some of the youngest and most productive members of those societies. They killed and stole the land of people where they wanted to transport those people in. And they still have all of the things that they stole through dishonesty, murder, subjugation, and rape, they still own. Those are the people that we should be looking for reparations. Those are the people we should be looking for reparations. Because many of them still have control of the places that you were taken from. So, I want to talk today about the history of thankfulness in the Kemetic tradition, because I don't want you to think this is something that the Europeans created. And I want to talk to you about the history of Thanksgiving. First of all, you should know that when we talk about Thanksgiving, this painting from Jean-Léon Jerome Ferris, painted in 1899, helps us understand sort of the imagery that is used for this first Thanksgiving. And its title is The First Thanksgiving, 1621. So that event that occurred, which likely spanned about 3 days, occurred in 1621. This painting is supposed to be an image of it. That's what it's supposed to be. And look at this wonderful Puritan woman saying to the Native Americans, oh, please enjoy some food. Because this is just one of those multicultural, multinational celebrations of thanks. Is that really the history that we should focus on? Is that the history that we should focus on? You know, right now everyone is watching this documentary and series of fictional series on Jeffrey Dahmer. In order for him to kidnap, to drug, to kill, and even in many instances to rape and eat his victims, he would buy them a drink at the gay bar. Many of them black men, by the way, in town. Should we celebrate that Jeffrey Dahmer bought someone a drink who he ate later? That's what this is kind of like, right? Because we should know that these same people would be destroyed, annihilated, wiped out. You're celebrating the most irrelevant part, perhaps the most painfully ironic part of the story. Should we celebrate the fact that Jeffrey Dahmer gave his victims a drink, bought them a drink? Oh, wow, he's so generous. What's the real history? You should know that the first celebration in 1621 was a celebration at Plymouth Plantation in Massachusetts. That's where it comes from. And a man named Tisquantum, he's often called by the European Squanto, by the way. He was a Pauxet native, which is part of the Wampanoag Confederation. And he was the one that taught these pilgrims, these Europeans, how to catch eel and grow corn. By the way, it is believed that turkey was not on the menu. You should know that, right? That they probably didn't eat turkey. Anyway, 6 years earlier, a European by the name of Thomas Hunt had enslaved Tisquantum and 24 native men. And that's how he learned English, so that later he would be able to communicate with the native people in the region and also the Europeans that he was enslaved by. But you should also know right off the bat, he was the only one of the men that were kidnapped and enslaved to survive. Just him. Just him. And so he was enslaved, and during the time he was enslaved, French sailors came to his home. And they brought disease with them, and every one of the Pauxet, his people, were dead. By the time that Tisquantum gets back, they're gone. His whole village is gone. And the pilgrims then settle on the land where his family, his friends, his community once lived, killed by Western disease. You should know that Massasoit was the head of the Wampanoag Confederation. He's the leader of the Confederation. He didn't really trust Tisquantum. He didn't trust him. But Tisquantum went to him and asked, he said the pilgrims are suffering because they didn't know how to work the land. He asked on their behalf, and Massasoit gives them food when their supplies ran out. And that's what happens. It is believed that the celebration that occurred in 1621, as I said, lasted 3 days with 50 of these European pilgrims and 90 native people. Yes, Anika.
Heru says, those African nations are not poor. Ask some of the corrupt leaders, how can we never approach the Arabs for reparations? Many of them are still enslaving Africans to this day.
I think that we need to approach both. There needs to be a reckoning with these Arab organizations, Arab institutions, Arab nations that enslaved Africans before the European did. This is something we definitely should address. And you say the African nations are not poor. Every single one of them is considered a developing nation. The only one that might actually have true wealth is Nigeria. It's the only one. It's the only one. And many folks from Nigeria were stolen. They were stolen. And for many, many years, continuing today, by the way, we're seeing the hand of European power and now Chinese power take control of many of the things that are, many of the natural resources of Nigeria and the rest. and the rest. If you look at the list of the top 50 most wealthy nations, what number would you find the first African nation? There's a question for everyone. What is the first African nation if you look at the top 50? You can Google this. And as you look at the top 50 most powerful nations, how many of them were enslavers? How many of them acquired their position on that list because of enslavement? I'm not saying that there isn't a repaired relationship that must occur with these African nations. That's not what I'm saying. The first thing I'm saying is they're the only ones that are trying to repair the relationship. And they got the least and are still at the behest of these same European powers that enslaved us. See, it wasn't like just the European enslaved us and they walked away and those Africans were able to live in their wonderfully tropic land. That's not what happened. Then they were preyed upon by colonialism. And we should also recognize that many of us talk about also the fact that there were Africans who were complicit, and there were. But how many of the African nations and African rulers that fought enslavement can you name? Is it possible that we've been told that story the wrong way as well? Is it possible? How many of those Africans who fought against the Europeans can you name? If you can't name more than one, maybe two. By the way, the only person that anyone in here is probably going to name is Queen Nzinga. That's it. So I'm going to take that off your list. Other than Queen Nzinga, who else fought? If you don't know that story, maybe you don't know the whole story. We have to reckon with this. We have to come to a better understanding of what occurred so we can understand how we got to where we are. That's the challenge we have. Do we have any names coming up? Can anyone name them? And can anyone name when you look at the 50 most wealthy nations, which is the first African nation and what number are they? Because you have to recognize all of the resources that these wealthy nations use come from the places where the poorest people are. So shouldn't we be going after those nations that have benefited the most? In fact, they were not just the ones that benefited the most, they were the ones that constructed the plan to deprive you of your homeland, to rape our foreparents, to force us to work at the behest of a lash of their whip. They're the ones that created the system. So that's the way I think that we should look at it. So let's think about what happened after that dinner. So I want you to understand exactly why I'm saying Thanksgiving is a counterfeit celebration. You should know that after Thanksgiving, millions of Native people were massacred over generations. Millions. The Europeans that they had encountered poisoned their water, and they also killed people with smallpox. By the way, we talk about now about how evil biological weapons are. I mean, you'll often hear that that's the red line for when people are at war, right? If biological weapons are used, then virtually the entire cadre of nations all over the world proclaim that the user of these biological weapons is wrong, and that they should actually be there should be sanction against them. But you should know that these European nations used biological weapons from the beginning. Listen to what William Trent says as he writes a letter on the siege of Fort Pitt in 1763. He says, out of our regard to them, he's talking about the Native Americans, out of our regard to them, we gave them 2 blankets and a handkerchief out of the smallpox hospital. I hope it will have the desired effect. His plan, their plan, and this is just one quote, there are others, that was to use this virus to kill as many Native Americans as possible. That was their plan. That was their plan. Then there was also the Trail of Tears, where 4,000 Native Americans die during forced relocation from the southwest of the United States to the west of the Mississippi River. Even today, Native Americans have the highest unemployment rate at nearly 50%. Native Americans have the highest suicide rate of any group. And no one is dealing with what actually was done. I want you to just look at the black and white etching here. The second image, this comes from something that was written by Father Bartolomé de las Casas. He's a Spanish friar who traveled on the second journey with Christopher Columbus. And he actually describes the horrors that the Spaniards actually involved themselves in as they annihilated the Native American people in the Caribbean. You'll see a woman there that is hanging. You might not be able to see, because the picture's a little small, that there's a small body next to her. This is a woman who was pregnant. They would often look at a woman and make bets on whether the baby was a male or female, and then they would cut the woman open, hoping that baby was mature enough that it would cry as they cut her open. And then they would kill her and kill the baby with the umbilical cord. They would hang them. They were known to feed babies to dogs. That's what you're seeing the person in the foreground doing. And they were also known to cut the limbs and the noses off of Native American men. Millions of Native Americans die in a very short period of time. In a very short period of time. By 1789, George Washington creates a national day of Thanksgiving. Did you know that Thanksgiving becomes a national holiday because George Wooden Teeth Washington is the one that did it? By the way, George's teeth were not just wooden. It is now known that he also had human teeth in his mouth, the teeth of enslaved Africans. Did you know that? Did you know that? Well, it is George Washington in 1789 that creates this National Day of Memorial. And it is Abraham Lincoln, yes, that Abraham Lincoln, that creates a federal holiday on the fourth Thursday in 1863 for the observance. By the way, 1863 is also the year that the Civil War comes to an end. Just think about all of this happening at the same time. This is when it becomes a national holiday. Yes?
We have some answers to your earlier question. Big Payback Porter says Nana Maroon.
Say again?
Big Payback Porter says Nana Maroon is one of the people who fought back.
I think you're talking about, are you talking about Nana, Nanny of the Maroons in Jamaica? That's who you're referring to. I'm talking about someone that is on the African continent who's fought enslavement. So it's a good answer, but not the answer I'm looking for. Nanny of the Maroons is actually on Jamaican currency, along with another major rebellion leader.
Lee McCoy says, Colonial says what I figured you were talking about. Many of the thriving nations which benefit from the transatlantic slave trade are African nations run by colonizers.
Mm-hmm.
And Father Haru says, let's begin with Egypt.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let me not even disagree. I agree with that. Here's the challenge, though. I'm going to challenge you on one part of it. Egypt was not part of the transatlantic slave trade. The modern Egyptians, well, not the modern Egyptians, the Egyptians that, and I'm using Egyptian I know that we're both using Egypt to designate a time frame, right? Those folks who come into Egypt and take control of that African land, starting with the 6th century of the Common Era. 6th century? 6th century of the Common Era. Yeah, maybe the 7th century. They actually are the ones that come in, that 632, I think, is when they start. So it's really the 7th century of the Common Era. They actually come in, and they are part of the Islamic enslavement trade, which has its major center in that area around Zanzibar. So yes, that happens earlier. And I do think that we need to have a reckoning with the Islamic enslavement trade. It's one of the reasons, by the way, remember I said earlier that I was considering the Nation of Islam when I was really beginning to learn about the history of Christianity? One of the reasons why I did not join the Nation of Islam is because I was concerned about some of the statements that Louis Farrakhan was making around protecting those Arab countries that had played a role in enslavement and still were enslaving on smaller levels, but definitely still enslaving people of African descent. Places like Mauritania and Libya, and it's still going on today. If you want to know more about what's going on, the work of a CNN journalist named Nima Albergur is absolutely amazing. She's done amazing work, literally going to the space where Africans, sub-Saharan Africans, as we might call them, Black Africans, are being sold even today. And so it is still occurring, and we should reckon with it. I agree that we need to reckon with it. Absolutely. Absolutely. So the only reason why we're not talking about that here is because we're talking about Thanksgiving. We're talking about European nations and what they did. But the number of people who are involved is larger than we might actually acknowledge. So here's the question. Should the history of Thanksgiving be forgotten? I mean, now it really all it is a celebration where families get together and eat, and maybe some folks go out and look at some inflated balloons here in New York, right? I mean, is it really still about this dastardly period? Can't we just enjoy our families, Jabari? Why are you making this difficult by asking us to think about its history? Well, I want you to recognize that the Native American people of this land are still focused on it, as they should be. They have called Thanksgiving a national day of mourning. Here is the plaque at the place where the quote unquote pilgrims came ashore that describes what they do. It says, since 1970, Native Americans have gathered at noon on Coles Hill in Plymouth to commemorate a national day of mourning on the United States Thanksgiving holiday. Many Native Americans do not celebrate the arrival of the pilgrims and the other European settlers. Did you know that the folks in the Wampanoag Confederation have now, they've even made their own apology saying why we should not have helped them? Did you know that? Did you know they've made their own apology? We're sorry we helped them. Let's continue. To them, the Thanksgiving Day is a reminder, yes, that is a reminder of the genocide of millions of their people, the theft of their lands, and the relentless assault on their culture. Participants in National Day of Mourning honor Native ancestors and the struggles of Native peoples to survive today. It is a day of remembrance and spiritual connection, as well as a protest of the racism and oppression which Native Americans continue to experience. Erected by the town of Plymouth on behalf of the United American Indians of New England. That's the plaque that we see now. By the way, as we're talking about the destruction of their culture, more and more is coming out now about the boarding schools that Native children were forced in, because many of these European nations who were fighting against Native Americans had already forced them onto reservations and had agreed that they would give them certain amounts of land for their reservations. But then they would give some of that amount of land to who? The Roman Catholic Church, to teach Native American children. They were forced into those schools. The first thing they would do is cut their hair, because Native Americans in many of their nations would grow their hair long. The first thing they would do was share their hair. And so much of this is in the news right now. So I think about 10 days ago, a little bit less than 2 weeks ago, Harvard University apologized because one of their museums had the hair samples of 700 Native American children. And they said they were going to take, and by the way, they described the child, how much Native blood they had, and what group they were in. So now they are promising to give that hair back to those groups. That just happened. And there have been many exposés on these children being forced into these schools. What did they do? The practice they actually believed in was called kill the native, save the child. So they would force them to do things that were not Native American. And many of those children in this harsh environment, where there's more proof that we're looking for right now of the sexual perversion of these folks that ran these schools that was practiced on these children. But we know that literally thousands of them were buried in unmarked graves. Thousands of them. In fact, there's actually a European descended, a Tamil man that worked for one of these schools, and he said that his supervisor told him to go do some work in the basement. He went down there and he saw some mounds that he said had to be graves. And he said he felt so uncomfortable in there. He went and he told the supervisor. The supervisor said, mind your business. And he said for over a year, he was really uncomfortable with what happened. And so he told other people. And then the police went to investigate, and they found that that whole area had been cemented over. I'm telling you that they're hiding what happened to those children. Now, I know that the Europeans did dastardly, horribly barbaric things to Africans. Today, I'm talking about what they did to the Native Americans, because this is another part of the same story, right? They stole the land and massacred millions of Native Americans, and then destabilized countries in Africa and stole those people to work on that land for free as they massacred, raped, and tortured them. This is what happened. This is what happened. So, I love this one. I saw someone wearing this shirt. It says, no thanks, no giving. And one of the bars of the flag is over the mouth of a Native person. Genocide, poverty, hunger. What are you celebrating? Give thanks every day. This is one of those Native American shirts. By the way, to hear more about the complexity of this holiday, there's a really good article written by a friend, actually, a colleague out of Philadelphia in the Philadelphia Tribune. It was written literally 1 year ago, November 20th, 2021. It was published by Michael Cord, who calls himself the angriest Black man in America. He's a wonderful guy, an attorney in Philadelphia. And he writes an article in the Philadelphia Tribune called Celebrating Thanksgiving is Celebrating Racist Genocide. This is a powerful piece. He says, and this is a bit of it, he says here, Thanksgiving as an American holiday is a celebration of that racist genocide and massive land robbery. But don't take my word for it. Listen to what Wam Sutta, the official representative of the Wampanoag Nation, wrote in September 10, 1970, in response to an invitation from the Massachusetts Department of Commerce for his tribe to participate in the 350th anniversary of the Pilgrims' arrival. This is going to sound very similar to another speech. The speech by that amazing formerly enslaved African, Frederick Douglass. Listen to this. He says, this is a time of celebration for you, celebrating an anniversary of a beginning for the white man in America. It is with a heavy heart that I look back upon what happened to my people. Even before the Pilgrims landed here, it was a common practice for explorers to capture Indians, take them to Europe, and sell them as slaves. So he continues here saying that he is not celebrating on this day. I want you to recognize, I want to go through this part a little bit quickly because we're behind. I want you to recognize that this celebration is actually the idea of celebrating that which you are thankful for is not something we should leave in the province of these Western colonialist genocidaires and rapists. That's not what we should do. That actually celebrating the harvest, celebrating what you've been given by the divine is something that is commonly seen in Kemet. It's probably the first place we begin to see it. Take a look at this image from the tune of Senedjem and E. Nefertiri, his wife. Look at them here. They are saying thanks to the divine, and as they are able to go into the Hall of Ma'ati, as you see that Senedjem actually has made his transition. Can you see here on the end? He's making his transition. Now you see that he's able to reap the wheat and reap. These are probably like scallion. And he's able to toil the land. And the land is filled with food and those things that he gets because he lived a righteous life. We constantly see thanks here. Look at him here with his wife tilling the soil. He has these two calves, I guess they are. They have horns though, and he's using a plow, and his wife is behind him spilling the seed. Look at that, beautiful, beautiful. By the way, look at his little locks. By the way, look at his little locks. I mean, this is an African, right? They'd like you to believe otherwise, but look at us here. But you should also recognize that our African ancestors also spoke painfully about those times when the land did not give to them that what they needed. So you're seeing an image from what is sometimes called the famine stele, and this is from the time of Unas, and you can see these people that are starving because there was a famine, because the Hapi River did not overflow the way that it should. Look at their bodies, look at their ribs. They're saying that they are experiencing the most difficult of times. So they were clearly aware of the importance of receiving from the Netaru those things they needed for their sustenance. Here's another stele that is actually in Kemetic Nubia. I believe this is on Elephantine Island, actually. And you're actually seeing here that the king has sent Imhotep down to see why the Hapi is not providing the way that it normally had. And so here he gives thanks. He says thanks to those deities of the land. We're seeing that we have a new kit here. We have Khnum there. He's saying thank you. Please continue to provide for us. And they also took an area around the southern Hapi and designated for the use of the deities. I think that this can be seen as a spiritual practice, but it should also be seen as an ecological practice because they were creating what is should be considered a wetland, so that the water would not be fouled. That is also what they're doing. And this description describes Imhotep as being part of this practice. So, how should we practice gratitude today? How should we practice gratitude today? I want to say that our Kemetic ancestors have taught us that there's wisdom in gratitude, and that we should practice what could be called radical gratitude. Instead of focusing on the things that we have not received, focusing on the challenges that we face, focusing on the difficulty of the difficult road that brought us to where we are, we should remember to be grateful for the things that we do have. Because when you stand in a place of radical gratefulness, gratitude, what you're able to do is you're able to actually receive more because of your thanks. Here go 9 barriers to gratitude. I'm going through this quickly. Look at the 9 barriers to gratitude. 1, we feel entitled or we feel unentitled. What do you mean we feel entitled? Sometimes we don't feel grateful because we say we deserved more. And then we also, on the other hand, sometimes we feel that we don't deserve what we got. And so we are unable to feel grateful. Number 2, we don't realize what we've actually received. We need to focus on the things that we've actually gotten. That's one of the barriers. We're not thinking about what we've actually received. Number 3, we don't properly celebrate our friends, family, and allies. There are people in your life that have assisted you to get to where you are, assisted you in the most difficult times. And being grateful means that we should celebrate those people who have assisted us. Number 4, we don't recognize that the challenges along the way prepare us for our victory. That's another part of this challenge. We must recognize that steel sharpens steel. We must recognize that in some ways we're having these challenges because we're being forged into something greater. If we looked at our lives that way, we would still be grateful, even for some of the challenges. Number 5, we don't receive we don't understand that we have to give in order to receive, that we must give in order to receive. This is a fundamental practice of Kemetic spirituality. It's the reason why we stand in the position of adoration with the left hand forward. Our Kemetic ancestors looked at the left side of our body as that which gives, and the right side as that which receives. And notice that the left hand, the left foot, is further forward than the right hand and the right foot, because we must give in order to receive. This is a divine circuit of energy that must remain in its proper integrity in order for it to work. Number 6, We haven't focused on how fortunate we really are. Yeah, we have problems, but just think for a second what it could look like. That's another thing we need to do. Number 7, we become pessimistic. We think that everything is going to go wrong. And because we think everything is going to go wrong, we don't focus on what actually happens when things go right. Number 8, we don't really recognize our power. We don't recognize that in many instances, not all, in many instances, we have a hand in what happens to us. And as a divine entity, you should recognize and reclaim your power. And number 9, you're not stopping to focus on the journey. These are the 9 barriers, I say, to radical gratitude. Listen to what Ptahhotep says in Maxim number 9. He says, if you work hard and if growth takes place as it should in the fields, it is because the Nter has placed abundance in your hands. If you look at that which you do and that which you receive as a gift from the divine, then you'll actually approach this in a different manner. This is Maxim number 9 of the world's oldest complete book. Listen to Ptahhotep speaking to us in wisdom. We must retain radical gratitude. And then finally, I want to introduce you to, for some of you who are unfamiliar, what some people call the 5 gifts of Het Heru. The 5 gifts of Het Heru. Listen to what the Stela of Ipui says from the 18th dynasty first. He says, give praise to Het Heru, who lives in Waset. Kiss the earth for reverence to her in all forms. It was on the day that I saw her beauty. My mind was spending the day in celebration thereof, that I beheld the lady of the 2 lands in the dream, and she placed joy in my heart. Then I was revitalized by her food. He who is wise will honor her at the seasonal festival. That which gives teaching to the people might be regarded to be pure food. Listen to that. Those things that give you wisdom are the purest of food. That's powerful. Near the servant in the place of truth, Ipui, the justified says, in order to solve the problem of rivalry, jealousy, and coveting her, the wonders of Het Heru, which she did in ancient times, should be related to ones who do not know and the ones who do know. A generation should tell the next generation how beautiful she truly is. This is connecting us to gratitude, connecting us to love, connecting us to the beauty of all the things around us. And he said that he was actually spending the day thinking about this principle. Remember, Het Heru was a principle personified as a beautiful woman, but not a literal woman. This is an expression of radical gratitude. And he says that wisdom of receiving and being appreciative of the things that you receive should be regarded as the purest food. That's what sustains you. And then finally, this is usually what is sometimes called one of the 5 gifts of Het Heru. And we don't see an attestation of this practice in the ancient world, but there are those who practice it today that say that it has always been practiced, that the people that got there learned it. Here is the question you must ask yourself, and this is your homework for today. What 5 things would you miss if this was the last day of your physical life? What 5 things would you miss if this was the last day of your life? When you write this list of those 5 things, then what I'd like you to do is look at the people and the Netanru that are connected to those 5 things and give thanks. That's what I'd like you to do today. Over the next week, instead of focusing your gratitude on a day, which really is the celebration of white supremacy, of genocide, and of the beginning of, in many ways, the most difficult time for both the Native American and the African. What we should be doing is setting our tune, our tone, our focus on gratitude from our ancient perspective. rather than allowing those people who have annihilated us, who have subjugated us, to tell us when to be grateful. They only want you to be grateful when they are grateful, so they can not acknowledge what they did to you and to your cousins. So I'd like for you to think about this today. What 5 things would you miss if this was the last day of your life? Write those 5 things down. Next to them, write the people, it may be more than 5, the people who assisted you in receiving them, the divine energies that assisted you in receiving them. And then practice radical gratitude. Practice radical gratitude for receiving it. Yes, Anika, I think I have some comments or questions.
Yes, JJ is asking, are you familiar with Iricha?
Is he talking about the celebration in Ethiopia? Maybe. He might be thinking about the celebration in Ethiopia that is focused on, I believe, the sycamore tree in Ethiopia. If that is what you're talking about, yes, I am familiar with it. It's a celebration of the Oromo people. I think that's what he's referring to. And there are those, including Baba Heru, that said that that is a celebration of Het Heru, an ancient celebration that has come into the modern day. That might be what he's referring to.
I think like Porter mentioned some other revolutionaries in Bangala of Angola, Nyamwezi of Tanzania.
Yes. I think some of the challenge is when we begin to look for those who should take responsibility for what happened to us, we have been directed, in fact, weaponized against Africa. That's not to say that there weren't some Africans who were involved, but keep in mind that of those people who were involved, their family members were enslaved too. This was a very, very convoluted time. It is the European who truly benefited from this. And we should hold them accountable for what they did. That's not even going into the Muslim, the Arabs, who actually enslaved us earlier, but we should go into that as well. Absolutely. So with that, I should say the divine force in me meets the divine force in you. Please go about practicing radical gratitude and saying thanks, giving a divine dua to those people and entities that have allowed you to be the person you are today. Shem Ma'at. Anika, could you please come forward and do the final affirmation?
Okay. So just a few announcements first. One, again, as we mentioned earlier, for those of you who are interested in initiation, applications will be available in December. We'll announce the exact date when they go live. You'll be able to fill those out. Everyone who applies will be interviewed to determine whether this is a good fit for you and also if it's a good fit for us. So please look out for that. If you are interested in traveling with us, again, next summer in 2023 to either Kemet, Ghana, or both, the deposits are due December 15th. So please, if you're interested, go to our website, www.centerformaat.com. And the trip will be taking place July 31st to August 11th for the trip to Kemet, and then August 9th to August 19th for the trip to Ghana. So please go to our website for more information. All of the details are there. There are brochures that tell you the entire itinerary of the trip, and any details or questions you might have are probably answered on the website. So again, www.centerformaat.com, and you need to put your deposit down to save your space for your reservations for the flights. All right.
Yes.
So,
and dua to all of you who have given donations today as well.
Yes.
Dua, as we always say, we don't do this for money, but we need money to do it. It costs money to do it. And so we're so pleased that you have assisted. If you haven't, please go ahead. You can go to the Cash App at Shrine, $Shrine of Ma'at, and make some donations as well. Dua.
So again, we will end with our affirmation, or one of the oldest prayers that you would find in the Reu Impert Emheru Enger, known as the Amasu. So please repeat after me in our language of our ancestors, the Inter, and then we'll repeat it in English. So, Amasu in Panter. Sauksu. Emetra. En Panter. Autu. Aura. Maketipa.
Erura.
Give yourself to the one most high.
Give yourself to the one most high.
Keep yourself daily for the divine.
Keep yourself daily for the divine.
And do it tomorrow.
And do it tomorrow.
Just as you did it today.
Just as you did it today.
Twa winter.
Twa winter.
Thank you to divine. And thank you to all of you for being with us today.
Dwa family, please have an incredible, have the rest of your Sunday be incredible. Have this week be one where you don't beat up on the people who love you, but hopefully you're going to bring some knowledge and information to them that will be edifying. I truly hope that you're going to be in good stead, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. With that, I say Shema Ma'at. Go forth in divine balance. We'll see you soon.